The rationally minded boating enthusiast may think that you should not use house paint to paint a boat, and there is some logic to that because a boat is not a house. Unless you own a houseboat or you live on some type of a cruising yacht. In that case, a boat is a house. So I guess you can use house paint on a boat, the end. But seriously, in some cases, using acrylic latex house paint may make sense for you. In my case, I already own too many boats. I build boats and I enjoy building new experimental designs, some of which may end up being complete failures that I'm just gonna scrap. In my situation, house paint is the best paint. It's not very durable. Some people may not like the appearance. It doesn't cure very hard, but it is very cheap and does the job of protecting the wood well enough. I already know my skiffs are going to get chewed up just by the nature of the way I do boating. They have to endure beach launches, beach landings, finding the bottom in shallow, gravel-bedded creeks, and even portaging from time to time. Regardless of what kind of paint I have on the boat, it's going to rub off, so it might as well be cheap because I know I'm going to have to be constantly repainting. From what I've seen, acrylic latex house paint is maybe a third or even a quarter of the cost of even the cheapest marine paint. I'm not really recommending anything here. I'm just sharing the way that I do things, and it might give some people some ideas, especially DIY budget type builders. My 12-foot sail and oar skiff will turn 1 year old this November. I built her in November of 2023, really as more of an experiment. The design was experimental, and some of the materials were as well. When I built her, I never dreamed the skiff would turn out to be as fun and practical as it has, and I also never dreamed that she would have held up this well to the use and what some might call abuse that I've put on her. As evident from the many videos of our adventures together, the 12 has kind of become my go-to boat. And she's spent a lot of time on the water and been to some pretty rough places. I take care of her the best I can and I try to keep her painted, but she is a working boat. And this type of skiff was always meant to be a working boat. She's always launched from the bed of my Ford Ranger, which is much harder on a boat than trailer launching. And she's been dragged over rocks, through mud, found the bottom many times back in shallow creeks with a gravel bed. She's been through a lot. I try to keep her put away in a dry place as much as I can, and usually she is, but there's been many times where I just arrive home from an adventure exhausted, leave the boat out in the truck bed, and it's not supposed to rain, but the next morning I wake up and the bilge is full of rainwater. To save cost on an experimental design, I built the 12 entirely out of common pine building lumber. The bottom is 1/4-inch exterior plywood and the top sides are a couple of boards, pine 1x12x12s. I think a lot of people are curious to see how she's held up to all this hard use, and this video will give you an idea of that. The 12 is in need of a fresh coat of paint and also a small repair. You may notice that the outer stem is missing. You may also notice what looks like a tire mark on the top sides a few feet aft of the stem. It's possible that someone ran into the skiff with a vehicle. It's also possible that that was me, but surely that can't be right because I wouldn't run over my own boat. That would be pretty stupid. During that mysterious accident, all that really happened is that the outer stem got knocked off and a little piece broke off of it that needs to be glued back on. The outer stem is really just there for appearance. The bottom looks pretty rough, but actually most of the surface area of the planking is still covered with good paint, but you can see there are a few bare spots, which is really not what you want. The bare spots are mostly concentrated near the bow, and I believe that is most certainly from beach landings. Probably the best thing going for the 1/4-inch plywood bottom planking is that I got lucky because I didn't really search all that carefully. I got lucky and got a piece that doesn't have a lot of bad voids in it. Voids are just exactly what they sound like, an empty space between the layers, and what can happen with those is water gets in. And that's what you really don't want, is water in between the layers of ply. This crack is the worst thing I can find on the bottom, and it's not terrible, but you've got to figure some water is going to be working its way in there for sure. I guess you could call this checking. I can't tell for sure if this imperfection was already present when I bought the piece of plywood or if that's something that's developed. You can see the skeg is extremely chewed up and it's probably lost, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of an inch in height since I first built the skiff. And that's okay because the skeg is just kind of a consumable part, and it's actually an acceptable way to drag the boat a short distance without using a roller, or at least to me. I'll just drag it on the skeg, rather than scar the actual bottom planking. After giving the hull a basic cleaning to remove any dirt and debris, I'm just going to sand it down and rough it up with some 80 grit, focusing especially on those bare spots and kind of trying to feather the paint right there, especially where it's peeling, and just feathering it the best that I can. Anywhere the paint still looks pretty good, I'm not going to spend a long time sanding. I'm just going to rough it up and make it dull. I go ahead and clean up the splinters on the skeg, even though it's going to be back to its natural state in no time, but it only takes a few seconds, so might as well. After removing any sanding dust, it's time to slap a coat of paint on there. I like to use a roller on a large surface like this just because it's faster. You really don't want to lay down a big thick coat of paint. I actually use a 3/8 inch nap, which is for a very smooth surface, and roll out thin coats, giving them plenty of time to dry and cure. And for one thing, you save paint doing that, but also the paint ends up curing a lot harder with a thinner coat in my experience. And a thin, hard coat is a lot better than a thick coat that's just going to peel off. That being said, acrylic latex doesn't get that hard to begin with, but it does seem to make a difference. To my mind, rolling across the grain at least some of the time helps to work the paint into the grain of the wood and into any checking especially. I don't really know how well that works, but it seems to. I like this button up so much that I completely wore it out. It was a good shirt, loose fitting, reflective color, and loose woven cotton. It was a good summer sailing shirt, nice and cool. Sydney used to call it the party shirt. Now it's just a painting smock. When the bottom paint dries, I flip the boat over to give the interior another coat of my standard Bullseye 123 primer. The checking is very noticeable on the plywood on the interior side, and I imagine that's probably from sun exposure more than anything. Although the bilge does occasionally hold water for a short period of time, whether that's rainwater or just water from my shoes from getting in and out of the boat. I use this primer on the interior of most of my boats. I like the color. It's a very light gray, so it's pretty reflective to reflect sunlight. I expect that most of the checking of the plywood will actually be filled in pretty good by this stuff. It's also very cheap and available pretty much anywhere, and I just like the fact that it's the most generic possible paint. Bullseye 123, it's just that easy. One final thought on painting a boat with house paint, and really just on my general approach to boat building and boating. I love wooden boats for their beauty and the unique experience that they provide, and also the way that they enable creativity and experimentation with different designs. I can come up with something and just slap it together, given that I have the time and resources to get it done. But also, wooden boats can make boating a lot more affordable and accessible to more people, especially using the DIY home-built type approach that I do. Just throwing out an estimate on the fly, my 12-foot skiff probably cost around $400 to build. I find that to be pretty high value considering what you end up with. If you don't have a lot of money, it's true, you probably will end up spending more time to get the same result. I use my skiff hard. I use it like a work boat, and even so, the latex paint has held up well enough. I repaint frequently, but it's held up better than a lot of people might think. I could imagine for the average person that's going to use their boat more casually for a few hours every now and then, every other weekend, I would think latex paint might be a viable option for you. I think it'd hold up pretty well, especially if you take care of the boat, store it indoors in a cool, dry place out of the sun, probably do all right. I know I'm not pioneering the acrylic latex paint approach. A lot of people have done this, and a lot of people swear by it. I'm just kind of sharing my experiences here. kind of get a kick out of people telling me I'm doing something the wrong way, especially when I have reasons and experience informing my methods. And I'm always reminded of a conversation I had with a representative from some marine outfit. I phrased my question by saying, "Can I do such and such?" The guy laughed and he said, "Nick, it's your boat. You can do whatever you want." Part of the enjoyment of boats is they're just so simple and you can get away with a lot. Obviously, you have to be careful. Pennants are now available at cumberlandrover.com. Historically flown for signal purposes, a pennant is that indescribable something that your boat is missing. They can help you read the wind, increase visibility of your small craft, and they just look cool, fluttering from the masthead or yard of a lug sail. You can have any color you want, as long as it's bright red. I have 2 styles of pennant now available at cumberlandrover.com.